Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris Thomas. This is the last in the series of safe location videos for the United States, and in this video I'm covering New Hampshire and Maine. So now just a quick note on New Hampshire. I've done about 2 or 3 takes on New Hampshire, and so the final take was an epic talk, and it's about 53 minutes of video, straight video, and so I felt really good about what I said, how I said it, and the detail. But as you may have noticed in some of my other videos, that my voice doesn't always sync to the video, and this is an ongoing thing I'm trying to fix. But in New Hampshire, I noticed that my voice gets ahead of the video, and well, actually, I'm not sure with the voice because I'm making settings back and forth, so it could be the video is ahead of the voice. But at any rate, focus on my voice, and it's only a second or two difference occasionally, sort of cyclic through the video. But I wanted to keep the video because I covered so much information and I worked so hard at it. I wanted to keep it, so I'm hoping that you'd be patient with the voice being out of sync occasionally. Now, after I finish, my next video actually is going to be a composite for the whole of United States, and I'm going to try to put everything I've learned about the safe locations for United States into one video in a compressed format. So that's what I'm going to try to do, and that'll finish the series. There may be other videos on the U.S. Different things, but I do need to move on. I've got to move on to Canada and the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And then after New Zealand, I've decided that I'm definitely going to be doing Brazil and India. And then from there on, I'll just move around the world as things pop up. So, okay, so let's head right into the state of New Hampshire. Okay, let's look at the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire has great rock in it. You can see some of the rock here is the same color as the Canadian Shield, which is 3.6 billion years old. So the rock is very stable. So it's a stable area to be in. So there's no problem with geology for New Hampshire or for Vermont. There are some fault lines that people need to look at. Now I get comments about this and that, things I might have forgotten or whatever when I videos, but my videos are, what I'm trying to do is give the broad brush approach, a look at the states, so that people can get a sense of the event that's going to happen to the state. So that's my intention. I don't. It would take me a month of Sundays to figure out all the various fault lines, what they're going to do. I just don't have that kind of time to do that. And besides, I think the broad brush approach to looking at a state in its entirety, and the geology and the major effects that happen to the state in the rundown to the pole shift and the pole shift itself and after-time living, to be more important than this fault line or this other thing, you know. So, anyways, so you can see that the rock looks very, very excellent. So if somebody is going to stay or locate themselves to New Hampshire, it would be a very good place to be. Now, there are other factors. In fact, I'm going to focus a bit more on the social factors. Now, I'm not talking about the attitudes of the people, particularly to do with the state. I'm going to talk more about, I think, a bit about migration, because we're so close, you see, to New York and Philadelphia, and all the huge concentration of people that are going to be moving in the months before the pole shift and moving away from the coast. Now, so we know from a geological standpoint, New Hampshire is terrific. We know also that for New Hampshire, I'm calling it about 400 feet for a pole melt, and I believe that will happen between the pole shift at 2023, and that the pole melt will finish by 2025. So we've got the pole melt. Now we've got the bounce up. Now the bounce up, I must remember to tell you to go into the cause of the pole melt. So now people complain about my halting style of speech. If you knew what was going on inside my brain when I was trying to figure these things out, bringing these forces together, I can't script this, so it's something that I've got to do live. So that's why I halt in my speech, and it's not very flowing. I'm not just expressing opinions here. I'm trying to be like a little bit like a reference, so that what I say is as accurate as possible, and I'm not just expressing general concepts necessarily. I'm being very careful here. That's why I speak this way. So okay, so we've got the pole melt. I'm going to go into in a bit, but the bounce up I think is very important to discuss. Okay, so all right, so quickly we're going to zoom out with Earth here, the bounce up here. Now I'm going to back up a little bit on the bounce up story, and that is to explain that the North American plate, which runs up underneath the Arctic, is huge. This is the North American plate up here, and it's locked. We know that this is basic physics, human physics. It's not a big secret, this information. So we know it's locked, but see, nobody's putting it together because the government is not doing it. The governments of the world are not doing what I'm doing. There's other people doing what I'm doing. I don't know, but I just know that I have a study of ZetaTalk, and I've been writing on it for years, and about the pole shift and Planet X, and I have a bit of a mind for physics. So when people complain about this and that and this detail on that, I realize that the government should be doing what I'm doing right now, but they're not doing it. Okay, so now part of my frustration comes from people complaining about me using ZetaTalk. Now, I don't know anybody who's read ZetaTalk who complains about it. A few people complain about the May 15th, 2003 thing and this and that. There are a few things, but there's all good reasons for it. ZetaTalk is a solid work. Now, if you want to run off with, oh, the Zetas and the Greys are evil, and believe me, I know it firsthand. I've been there. I've had run-ins with Zetas, personally, directly, direct experience. I'm not talking about the ZetaTalk Zetas. I'm talking, that's a different family. I'm talking about the negative Zetas. So, if you want to get educated about ET beings, then you should meet some. And I've met a few. So, they're not all bad. So, if you want to rely on human textbooks to figure out what the pole shift is going to do, you can do that. But you're going to do a lot of work because the information is not sanctioned by the universities. It's not supported by the governments of the world. Many great thinkers in our world are pole shift unaware. So unless you've had the pole shift dreams alerting you, and many people have written to me and chatted with me over this and that, telling about the pole shift dreams they've had, warning of the pole shift coming. Now these are old souls that have been alerted by their family, their spiritual family, about the pole shift. That's what's going on. Now if you're a young soul and you're left-brained, it's okay, but you're not likely to get the dreams. I'm not saying you can't, just saying is this a less of a likelihood. And it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly good. But there are many people in the world that get the pole shift dreams, and they know, and they have had, because the data and the information you get over with a pole shift dream is far and away more detailed than you could get through your brain, through your eyes. Trust me. So, my blurb on that, and I use ZetaTalk, so if you don't like it, don't watch the video. But it's good stuff, and as the Zetas in ZetaTalk do say, they say use your own intellect, figure out what you want to do, make your own decisions. They tell them that. They say that. So that's what I'm saying, the same thing. So, getting back to the point here, that we know that Eurasia, the two biggest continents in the world, and North America, are locked underneath the Arctic. So they're not going to move. So what has to happen is that the peripherals of these continents have to adjust to pressures. Now we're not covering Europe and Asia right now, but there are stress points in India. India is going down, and it's being pushed under the Himalayas. Southern China is the ground is stretching and opening up. But that's another. I'm off topic here. So we know. Okay, so we got the lock here. So we know also that South America is pinned here against the Antarctic plate, against the Antarctic plate. So we know that that South America is moving like this. It's not that far, but it's rolling like that. And the reason it's rolling is because the Atlantic is spreading open. the mid-Atlantic ridge is opening. Now that is human physics. They know that. That's why there's a big ridge down, big mountain range. The longest mountain range in the world is in the mid-Atlantic ridge, and that's because this plate is moving that way. The African plate's going that way, and the South American plate is moving this way. So this, and the North American plate is moving that way, and the Eurasian plate is moving this way. Now I know there's subplates in here, but I'm just giving you the basic idea. So it's a spreading. So that's allowing or forcing this South America to roll that way. Now there are other things happening on the other side of the world here, but we're just talking about North America and the bounce up. So as South America slowly grinds to the west, so if you observe what's happening in Colombia, the mountains moving, shifting, the earthquakes and landslides that are all occurring down here, and that's the ones that just make it into the news. All the stuff going on in Chile, and there's a lot of continental action happening here, and that's because the Pacific is compressing. So as South America rolls to the west, now that's ZetaTalk information. They put it all together in a nice package in about 30,000 web pages. So as it moves, it's going to grind Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua into rubble. Now it's also putting pressure on the U.S., the ground under the U.S., and it's pushing Mexico to the west. And so what's happening then is that because it's pushing that way, it's to the west, it's also making great pressure, applying great pressure to the eastern seaboard of the United States, which will result in a shift of this whole landmass here. This whole landmass here, you can see it. Now, as it happens, New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, it's all going south, all going with it. So the split, you think it goes this way, the New Madrid break point, but it's not actually. It's actually going underneath the Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, and zooming down in here, and through the New Madrid area, and over this way and this way. So that will be the split. But essentially, this piece here of the eastern seaboard is being driven down, who knows, mile, 2 miles, I think they say it at one point, into the Gulf of Mexico. That's during the hour of the shift. So that is going to, that's during the hour of shift. So there's all kinds of stuff happening, but that's the essential event that's going to happen. Now the New Madrid itself, the event itself is, as they say, is already started, but it's very, very gentle. But it runs, the event, in my opinion, will reach a pre-culmination event about 8 months before the pole shift in 2023, sometime in 2023. And we know that the sequence events through that were given to us by ZetaTalk. And now, if you really, if you study this, and the sequence of events, it all makes sense. Physics, it makes great sense. You got the Himalayas are so high, is because for who knows? I don't know how long, but for many, many millions of years, the Indian Australian plate, continental plate, has been driven underneath the Eurasian plate, which isn't going anywhere. So the only way it's got to go is up. That's why the Himalayas are like that. They're so high. So in order for the Indian Australian plate here to move, what has to happen is that India must go down. How far? 20 feet? 100 feet? I think it's about 50 feet. No, it has to be more than that. I think it's about 100 to 200 feet. I'm not sure. Don't quote me. But it's got to go down substantially in order to move, to adjust. Because remember that the Pacific is compressing. So there's a lot of pressure over here, of subduction pressure, and it's putting a lot of pressure on this plate. So when it finally adjusts, India goes down, and it doesn't leave much left of India. Now we'll cover India at another point, but it goes down, and it goes on. Now this is during the run down to the pole shift, and I think it's going to be about 8 months before a pole shift sometime in 2023. But it all starts here, and then once this adjusts, that gives space for the adjustments on this plate, which will be crumbled and driven down, the Sunday plate here, which is part of the Eurasian plate, sort of a subplate. And then when that moves, of course, the Carolina plates and the Philippine plates are resting against it, and so they move. So then that allows movement on the other side of the Pacific, which is over here. And so these are major events. Now they're already happening, but they're moving slowly. So the lock point, that's a ZetaTalk expression, is the Indian Australian plate against the Eurasian plate under against the Himalayas. That's the key point. So when that moves, everything else starts to move afterwards. So you have a sequence of events to look for. People ask, well, when is it going to start? Well, it's a process. Processes are always running. So, but we do have a key, so you can look for that. So I'll make sure this is up on the channel. So that is sort of a quick expose with this map. So as you can see, the New Madrid is quite well on in the sequence of events. So my thinking is that the New Madrid, the pre-culmination of the New Madrid will happen probably 3 or 4 months or so before the actual pole shift itself. That's just a guess. So I would say early 2023 to mid 2023 for the New Madrid to adjust. So when it adjusts, the split starts, and you have massive earthquakes certainly through these areas here, down the St. Lawrence, underneath the lakes, which means if you live in eastern New York or eastern Pennsylvania or northern Ohio, these lakes are going to be going nuts during the sloshing, during the pole shift, the New Madrid event. So that's just the start. Now, the reason I mention this in detail is because when this does adjust, the pre-culmination, that's what I call it, massive earthquakes, it just gets started. What happens is the Zetas of ZetaTalk have said that all the bridges will go down on the Mississippi. that probably means that most bridges are not going to survive in this general area here. Certainly not the big bridge between. There's a bridge between this one here and Michigan here. I don't think that'll survive the New Madrid. So there's going to be a lot of blockages to travel once the pre-culmination of the New Madrid occurs. And what that means really is that because travel equates to supply, be it food, equipment, visiting families, what have you, moving your gear to your safe location. It means that anyone living in the eastern seaboard or in these areas here, in the plains, are going to have to get ready for the pole shift a year earlier because of this event. Because after that, I don't think much travel is going to be, certainly long distance state to state travel is going to be possible because of the checkpoints, military checkpoints to be set up, and it's just going to be a real mess. And I don't believe that the U.S. administration, the government, is going to be able to look after all the people. Not on that kind of a scale. And we know for sure that the privileged are going to be helped first. So, and I know that even the Hurricane Sandy victims, I believe it's New Jersey, not sure, don't quote me, but anyway, I know Hurricane Sandy people were, as of 6-8 months ago, were still looking for compensation from the government, and it hasn't come. So I don't think anyone in these areas can expect help from the government. And so that's a fact. I really believe that. So now let's go down to the hour of the shift. So what happens then? We've got a break. So this whole eastern seaboard will separate and be driven down into the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know how far, but even if it's driven 50 feet, that's enough to take out all the bridges and roads. So, but it's probably going to be a matter of a mile or something like that. Please don't quote me on that, but it's going to be bad enough where, well, anyways, everyone will be in their safe locations at the time, so it's not gonna, you're gonna be prepared against that anyways. But that's the hour of the shift event. So when that happens, that will release this piece of land from its tie to the North American continent, which isn't going to move, which isn't moving that much. So that leaves this area here is free to find its own buoyancy in the magma below the a mile or two, whatever, below ground. So that's why there's going to be a bounce up. Now that bounce up is predicted by the Zetas, and I don't have a problem with that because everything has relative gravity. And when you free a whole section of land from another immovable piece of land, such as in the craton, the Canadian Shield is a craton. When it separates from that, it's free to move. So it's going to bounce up. So we've got a bounce up predicted by the ZetaTalk of about 450 feet. Now we're talking pre-pole shift levels, pre-pole melt levels here. I'll explain that in a sec, the pole melt levels. 450 down to the axis point, which is between Montreal and New York, right through that valley. So this is going to be a fold point. So I roughly calculated that New Hampshire coast is going to be about 400 feet after the pole melt. Now the reason I focus on the pole melt, this is set for 400 for New Hampshire coast. So the reason I suggest that, I'll focus on that, is because there's no sense, if you are living in Dover, sorry, I didn't know if that, yeah, Dover, in Dover, New Hampshire, there's no sense in thinking that you're going to weather the pole shift there, because it's going to be under the waves when the pole shift hits. Well, when the pole shift hits for sure, but also when the poles melt. Now I'm going to cover the pole melt and why it melts in a sec. So you've got this coastline here. Now this will be approximate. Now you probably don't want to weather the pole shift out on this little section, this little hill here, above to the northeast of Manchester, because it's a little close to the action. Because don't forget, you've got the pole shift waves to deal with. Now the pole shift waves, the rule of thumb is 200 miles up and 100 miles from the coast as a ratio. By the way, I am aware of the roots of the meaning of the rule of thumb, which is not a very nice thing. So it's just a ratio. So we've got, I don't know, I'm to a wild guess here, about 30 or 40 or 50 miles or so from the coast. So you're going to have to be back from what you see here. So we have, now the 400 is only, that I'm using here, is only relative to New Hampshire. Because don't forget, we have a ratio of a bounce up to a 450 here to about, well, I think we're zeroing out equal somewhere around Pennsylvania. Okay, so that'll be the case. So you want to be back, and you got to remember that if you are situated, say in Stratford, is that a county? I'm sorry, I don't have a, looks like a little town. Let's call Stratford a town. If you're there, is a strong likelihood that that it's probably not safe. Now let's take a look at the height. 659 feet. Yeah. There's a bluff here. Yeah. Since we're talking about it, that's 10 kilometers. I wouldn't, if you're living in Stratford, I wouldn't stay there, for example. I would weather back maybe Laconia, somewhere up in here myself, and then migrate back to your town later. Now remember, if you're going to try to go back to your town site where your land was, all you're going to find is a wasteland, because the pole shift waves will have washed all through here, wiping off houses, and everything would be wiped out. So you got to keep that in mind, that you're going back to a wasteland, and likely, frankly, dead bodies. So I'm sorry to say that, but that's along this line, right? Let's assume that the pole shift waves have washed in. There's going to be rough. We're doing New Hampshire, so let's just do this little bit here. I wandered into Maine there a bit. So there's going to be kind of an imaginary line right now through here from, say, about Keene, maybe Hillsborough, maybe. Certainly, Loudon, Loudon, Pittsfield. There's likely to be a trash line, because anything that exists on the coast for 80 miles, 100 miles is going to be washed up, is going to be pushed up, and it'll be deposited in an imaginary line up here like that. So there's going to be a lot of material up there. So you'll have to pass through that to get to your location. Now, what I'm talking about, of course, is a pole shift in 2023. You're in your safe locations, you're back from the coast, and then you have aspirations about moving back to your land. I would certainly want to do that. And you bought land up here. When you migrate back, I forgot my point. I'm sorry. I'm gonna move on. If you have land in these areas and you want to go back to it, let's say you're in Mount Vernon, and what I would do is I'd drive huge steel stakes into the rocky ground on your four corners of your land, or more, and they may survive the pole shift wash, and then you can go back and find it later, and you can recommandeer your land if you want. Now, just some ideas on the type of action that's going to happen in the pole shift. So don't forget that in the months prior to the pole shift, the whole eastern seaboard is going to be pulled down. Now, because the Atlantic's stretching, the whole Atlantic is stretching, so this portion of this side of the North American plate is going to lose support, and it is predicted it drops. This is pre-pole shift now. This is before the bounce up. About 150 foot drop to possibly as much as a 250 foot drop, 200 foot drop in Georgia, Florida. Now, what happens? Okay, after the pole shift happens, you've got a bounce up in New Brunswick, prorated from Montreal to New York, the folding point. So you're going to take a 0 point around Pennsylvania, and you're going to prorate it. So you'll have a rough idea as to what the bounce up is going to be like. The bounce up will occur just after the pole shift, or during the pole shift, and then you got the pole melt, which I'm going to cover shortly. However, so you've got let's talk the just after the pole shift. You've got your up 450 in New Brunswick, and you are down. So you're up here from current levels, current sea level. This is just after the pole shift. You're at 450 here, up. But in Florida, you're about from 2 to 150 down, and it stays down. So it stays down in the Gulf states, in Florida, Georgia, what have you, the Carolinas. And as you move north, it gradually rises. Now, I wouldn't guess that. I'm not going to say that Virginia is going to have any bounce up, but I know through ZetaTalk that this valley provides an axis point, so we can assume that somewhere, the states south of Pennsylvania remain down. So that means you have, if you're looking at, I've covered this with the other. See, if you're looking at North Carolina, you're going to put in 675 foot pole melt, and that's going to be the same pretty much. No, let me correct that. That's going to be okay. We're not here to discuss that, and I'm going to get by this right now. We just know that this is going to be a maximum of 825 feet below the sea level we are at now. Sorry, it's going to be, the sea level now is going to be 825 feet under the waves in Georgia here. So you have to prorate that. I want to focus on New Hampshire, and I want to get into migration issue. But let's talk about the pole melt for a sec. The reason why we have a pole melt, and I'm going to cover weather a little bit here while we're flying on this, is that I'm going to go to my other globe, I think, here. Okay, so diversion here, we're talking about pole melt. So Planet X is passing by, getting near. And what happens is that Planet X right now, the reason why it's taken so long is because it's fighting through the particle flows on the ecliptic, which is near the sun's middle. So that means that Planet X is just under the ecliptic. So but it's also moving, I gotta think of this in 3D. It's also moving somewhat towards Earth, and it's going to pass more or less above Earth as it passes Earth. Planet X, at some point, as Planet X rises in the ecliptic in its slow progression through the solar system, the poles, the magnetic poles of Planet X have to align to the sun's magnetic field, because the sun is a dominant magnet in the solar system. So as Planet X rises, it has to slowly lay its north pole in a lateral direction, which means, because Planet X is near Earth, it means it's going to be, and it's moving more or less towards it, more or less. That means the higher that Planet X rises in the ecliptic, the more Planet X must roll its north pole towards Earth, and it's only doing that so it can align with the sun's magnetic lines of force. So as it rises on the ecliptic, it's pointing its north pole more and more towards the Earth, and as that's happening, of course, it's going to increase the wobble of Earth as it rotates, because the magnetrons flowing out of the north pole are becoming stronger and stronger. Not only that, but there is an association of the trash and the moons that are around Planet X will also be flowing towards Earth at that time, creating more fireballs. And of course the highly charged tail, the tail is the trash I'm talking about, and it charges the atmosphere of Earth, and was causing the EMP pulses that's downing the jet aircraft. So the more jet aircraft will be being downed, and there'll be more of an increased wobble. So as it approaches, Earth becomes more and more wild in its wobble, in its daily wobble. So as Planet X passes by, it grabs hold of Earth's south pole. Now the reason why it causes a shift is because Planet X at some point will increase speed, because it's being released from the ecliptic. So all this is happening at once. So Planet X approaches, gets close enough to Earth, and as it happens, it speeds up, gets a hold of Earth's south pole, and snaps it. And well, okay, what it'll look like, we're going to do it this way, because at that point in time, Earth is going to be, it has stopped its rotation, because of the mid-Atlantic ridge is a very powerful magnet. Now I can prove this, and so it locks on to Planet X's magnetic field as it gets close. So that's why rotation stoppage happens. So this is why we are Planet X looking at Earth. So what's going to happen then is the South Pole is going to be pulled up like that. Okay, Planet X is passing by. North Pole of the Planet X is pointing closely at Earth, and Earth's South Pole has no choice but to be pulled up because it's attracted to Planet X's North Pole. So it's that pulling up that separates the crust from the core, and well, actually the core, my mistake, sorry, the core is pulled up first inside, and then the crust follows afterwards. So that puts the poles on the equator. So the ice, I don't think this shows the total ice sheet, but that puts these ice sheets on the equator. What happens is now they melt. Now it takes, I did a calculation, I think it's about a little bit less than a foot a day over, now this is ZetaTalk information, that they say it'll take about 1.5 years, possibly 2 years, for the poles to melt on the equator. And that's what floods the world with this fresh water from the poles. Now, the new poles, which will be, the new North Pole will be here, off Brazil, bad news for Brazil, and here, just below India, but of course by that time India is under the waves, is the new South Pole. So we've got something like this. So that's the pole melt, and it's been calculated at 675 feet in worldwide global sea rise, and of course complicating that will be the fact that some areas of continents will be pulled down, such as the southern states, and then some will bounce up. Also Newfoundland does too as well, and Nova Scotia has a bounce up as well. And I think that's related to this, but that'll come out when I study for Canada. So that's the bounce up, the new Madrid, and the pole melt. So migration. Oh, by the way, since I'm on the subject, I figured out that when okay, I'm gonna have to use, okay, so when, okay, this is how we do it. Sorry, hold on, I'll be fine here. Okay, now this will be roughly what North America will look like an hour after the pole shift starts. By the way, this is why we get north-south winds, straight winds from north to south. And that'll be the direction of the wind, be north to south. Now, I know the Zetas have said that the winds will move generally in the prevailing, according to the prevailing winds for the pole shift. That's what they say to pretty much to guess the direction of the wind. Now, this is where I disagree with the Zetas, because I think that prevailing winds won't be a dominant factor. And I think when you consider that you're going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of miles an hour, if you calculate the circumference, a quarter of the circumference of Earth, moving in 1 hour, 90 degrees. So that's why the pole shift winds are straight. They're not gusting back and forth. I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but generally the gusts it'll be straight like that, and it'll be north-south winds. So you can keep that in mind. Okay, so, but we have a tipping globe, and so what happens is that even though the New England states are going to a higher latitude by roughly about 13 degrees, depending on which state you're in, 13 degrees, you're going to a higher latitude, and even though you'll be straight line to the new North Pole here, be still going to be a long ways away. When you look at the Bay, Hudson's Bay, now this is going to flood. This is going to flood something like this. You follow my cursor. It's going to flood something like that. Because this is pretty low land in here, so it's going to flood something like that. So that's going to expand the Hudson's Bay by, I'm guessing about maybe by twice the size, and that's going to bring the sea closer to the New England states. Okay, and the winds are going to be coming this way. Then the prevailing winds are going to kick in, right? Because the pole shifts stop, now the prevailing winds take in, and they're like this. Now we're in the northern latitudes, so they're westerlies. They're going like this. Okay, like this. So they're going from the Hudson's Bay over New England. Now, Hudson's Bay now is facing north, very cold, but now it's facing, all this is going to melt over here. This is going to be warmer water flowing through here. That's why you're going to have a better weather. That's why you're not going to be freezing over here. Now, I'm not saying your winter's going to be cold, aren't going to be cold. You're going to get snow, but you're going to have, it's going to be more temperate. And I think it's because of the flooding of the Hudson's Bay. So that's the weather and the pole shift. Now, migration is a big problem. It's a big problem. It's a big problem for these states because of New York and all the people living on the coastline here. So we know that the migrants will move along valley bottoms. Now, on foot they would do that on valley bottoms. So my thought is, let me find New Hampshire. My thought is don't be visible from a valley bottom. So wherever your safe location is, make sure you're not visible from a valley bottom. So people will be walking along here like that. So if you're up here, this is a good spot to be, for example. Now I know that brings up a whole other point about how for poor people wanting to move to an area, without a road to get in there. So that's another video, I think, to discuss that. I've been doing some thinking about that because it's kind of what I have to do. But anyways, so if you're hidden from a valley bottom, you're much more safer no matter where you are. That's why the plain states, the states, this is why it's so dangerous in the plains area, because you can't hide. You have to have distance to hide. So there's going to be a lot of migration before the pole shift as the tides are getting very high on the Atlantic seacoast, and also so keep this in mind that in the last year before the pole shift, this coast is being pulled down more and more. So the tides are going to be higher and higher and higher and higher. So that's going to drive people, and it's also going to make people realize that there is something big happening. And I think there's going to be a certain percentage of people, they're going to click and they're going to get it, that the whole Planet X pole shift thing is real, and they're going to start seeking high land. And so they'll be driving up through here. So it's going to be, the problem with New Hampshire and Vermont is that they're so close to the wealthy and the mobile. So you have to have your community, you got to know what you're doing if you're going to weather out the, if you have the choice, if you have the choice to move, then you'll make your choices. But certainly you're going to need to establish your camps early. Don't wait for 2022. Try to get it done by 2020, 2019. At least have it identified, have your routes identified, how to get there. If there's any bridges on the way, then find a route, establish a route where you can drive on land the whole distance without having to pass over a bridge. Now, I think you're probably better in New Hampshire as far in these states because of the good rock you're on. I think you're probably a little safer for last minute travel because the land is more stable. But it's certainly not true for parts of Pennsylvania where it's bending and shifting, and where you've got flood action going on near the rivers and river plains and flat areas. So, but don't forget, there's 21 rivers and dams in New Hampshire. They're all going to break during the pole shift. So, don't be on a valley bottom. Be hidden. You have to be hidden. If you're going to stick in these areas, then you're going to have to be hidden and have your community set up, and have a security detail. That is, but that's another video. It's kind of beyond my expertise on the whole military thing, because I'm. So that is New Hampshire. Okay, the state of Maine. The state of Maine is a great state for weathering out the pole shift and for the after-time. A few things about Maine. Has about 1.2 million people in it. They all seem to be near the shore here, the Atlantic seashore, and the northern areas seems to be pretty wild land. So it's almost uninhabited. So there's very little. There's lots of room for people to go into these areas for, if you can get up in there. That's another thing. There's roads, but this brings up a whole other point of for people who can't buy land. But there's a whole lot of this area is wild. It's very wild. Beautiful state. But that's for poor folk like myself who can't just go and buy land. Getting ready for the pole shift presents a problem, which you don't have in Maine. Where I live in British Columbia, Canada, Vancouver Island, all the wild land is pretty much controlled by logging companies, and they've got iron gates up, so you have to walk past the gates or have a dirt bike. Is what I do. So it's a problem for that I have to surmount. And I don't know what it's like in Maine, but that would be extremely detailed information that your locals, if you're living in Maine, you'd know this anyways, but you'd have to figure that out. But there is an issue in that for people who can't buy land, who know it's coming. There are ways of squatting, But anyways, everyone has their own path, but squatting is one way of dealing with not having land, because once the pole shift is done, uh, it's not going to matter if you're squatting on a piece of land out in the wild of Maine. So great state, great rock. Now, it does have a couple of issues. One issue is it does have some fault lines. You can see them here. Zoom in a bit. So you can see the lines. This map will be up on the channel for you to look at. But we know we're looking at Maine, and here something like this. So there are some fault lines, but it's great rock, so I don't think it's a big problem. But obviously you're going to have to be careful that you don't want to be right over top of a fault line during a pole shift. So I do have a couple of maps I'll put up for Maine, and these are earthquake hazard maps. So it gives you an idea. If you have an earthquake, then obviously a fault line is moving. So you can see them. Actually, we're talking about Maine here. So there aren't a lot of problems there. I have another map here from Maine. So these maps will be up on the and you can take a look at the maps for earthquake hazard. So that's one way of avoiding any issues during the pole shift. But by and large, Maine is great. Now the other problem with Maine is Karst. Now this map I was going to put up for Maine. You can see it here. You can see the light pink color. The light pink color is they call it areas of karst and features analogous to karst. So essentially it's karst possible ground. Now I thought, well, one could zoom in on this, but when you zoom in you don't have much reference. There's no reference to where you would be. There's no road reference or town references. So what I decided to do is I put together a map for Maine. I took that information, the karst information, and I superimposed it over the U.S. geological map of Maine. So, and I put a little note here that to ignore the blue. Now the thing is, after I put that and I realized, I look at this blue here, and it looks like they call it federal lands, the blue being federal lands. I found it confusing, but it seemed to match other karst. The pink seemed to match the other karst maps for the state of Maine. But I did notice there was one map that showed some carbonate rock. I know I'm being a bit fussy here. Where is it? I had it. I guess I erased it. It's in this list right here. I'll put it up. Anyways, it had a piece of carbonate rock indicated on a map. Here it is, right here. And you can see this piece of blue right here, and that is carbonate rocks. It's that dark blue right there. So I'll put this map up for you to see, but you can see, if you look at that piece right there and you go over to this, see, it looks an awful lot like that and is near the same area. So I think perhaps the blue happens to be a reference to carbonate rock. Now I can't see any blue there. I realize I'm kind of digressing here. but there's no, well, there's a bit of blue there, dark blue there. This is what you got to do if you want to do some analysis. I don't see any corresponding dark blue areas on the border of Maine in this map. So I'm going to put this one up as well, so you can watch out for the dark blue here. So you'll have to use this map. That'll be up on the channel, and you'll have to use this map as well. But I wanted to do this for state of Maine because then you've got references, roads and towns that you can use. So if you're thinking of buying some property in this area here, now this map is also pretty detailed. You can zoom in on this. So if you're thinking of buying a property in here, well, maybe you want to think twice. Maybe you want to think twice about that. So that's the only issue that I can see that's really serious about the state of Maine would be the Karst. So you've got this map, that'll be up on the channel. Okay, let's go back. So we've got recap. We've got Great Rock. We've got lots of uninhabited area to go to. It's only 1.2 million people. So now keep in mind that during the pole shift, this is 300 foot loss. This is set for 300, and that's what I think Maine will experience. Will be a 300 foot loss, so of sea level. Now compare that to 825 foot loss for the southern states, North Carolina, Georgia. So this is what it'll look like down here. So Jacksonville is going to be under 825 feet of water. That's in 2025 after the pole melt has finished, with a pole shift at 2023. So we've got, this pole melt here is set for Maine. Don't look elsewhere. It's just for the coast of Maine, because we know there's a bounce up with an axis point from Montreal to New York down this valley, what I call the Albany Valley, down here. So this is the bounce up, and this is the axis point. And for the extreme northern part of this landmass, you'd be looking at about 225 foot loss in elevation. So that's what it'll look like there in the Gaspé Peninsula. But the state of Maine will be closer to about 300, and that's what the coast will look like after the pole melt. Now, one thing about coastal living is that in the months and maybe a year, maybe a bit more, slowly the Atlantic coast of the U.S. gets pulled down. Well, that's the ZetaTalk information, and they say that now the reason for that is because the mid-Atlantic ridge down the center here is being stretched and pulled apart. The African plate is going that way, and the North American plate is going that way. But it puts a stretch on this whole, all the seafloor along the eastern seaboard. So that means what's happening is that there's a pull down on the coast that is released during when you get the pole shift event. During the pole shift, and that is number 10. here, this map will be up too. When number 10 happens, well, that's the start actually. This is pre-pole shift. But it's this joint here that will split and open and widen the Atlantic and compress the Pacific. But it's this split that releases the pressure on the eastern seaboard coast. So that's what I'm talking about. So what happens when that's released, then you get, during the pole shift, you get the bounce up. And the bounce up is only possible because this landmass, as I've said, will split off from the North American continent. So that leaves this piece of land here, this particularly New England, free to move. So apparently the rock here is lighter than other areas, so it will bounce up, and that's what the bounce up is. That's what's causing it. So as I said, anyways, when the dust is settled in 2025, this is what the state of Maine will look like and the coast. So this map will be up for you to look at. You can put your numbers in if you're thinking of buying land or locating in some of these areas. And I keep saying there's no sense in locating in where the sea is going to flood. So that's what these flood maps are great for. And now if you're buying land or locating yourself, you might want to put 350, because don't forget the 300 is just a guess, just my guess. So you put in 350, and here you go, you've got a little bit of 50 foot buffer. So you can buy your land and locate up in these areas here. Now, so let's go back to just prior to the pole shift. So it's early 2023, early, and slowly the coast has sunk. So that means that these people, probably 400,000 or 500,000 people, maybe a little bit less, will be losing their land slowly. So they'll be moving inland. So that's what the migration, the pre-pole shift migration is all about, because of the loss of the elevation, and the homes get swamped and people just pack up and leave, and they're going to start moving inland like that. So that's what the coast looks like just before the pole shift. And then of course there are other things going on, because just before the pole shift you have rotation stoppage, and rotation stoppage means that now the no longer that the water around the globe is accumulated for thousands of years around the equator. So the globe is actually oval, kind of an oval shape. So all this water, due to the centrifugal force of the rotation of Earth, when the rotation of Earth comes to a stop, and it will be something like this, because the mid-Atlantic ridge is here, so it locks on to planet X, which is sunward. We are the sun, so it stops something like this. So then you have the water will redistribute around the globe, and will go to the poles. When that happens, we are going to have even lower coastline than you see here. So what will happen? Sorry, let me rephrase that. The coastline at 150 foot loss predicted by ZetaTalk will lessen a bit, because the water is flowing away, and so it'll appear to be getting better. but of course the sun is still in the sky, so that's not much comfort there. So then the pole shift happens. Then you get the pole shift waves coming in, and then they say 500 to 600 feet around the world. Let's call it 550 because the Atlantic is widening. So that's 550. So this is what the pole wash will look like, something like that. I don't think it'll be quite as far inland because it's a different event. A flood is one thing, but a pole wash is another. So, but this gives you an idea of the dramatic difference of the pole wash. So one might probably would want to locate this. Well, I think it's pretty obvious that you want to locate your survival camp above the pole wash. Now, that's pretty obvious. But I don't think the pole wash is going to go this far in. That's more than 100 miles, and it's also 600 feet, almost 700 feet. So it won't go that far. Because remember, this is a simulation of a flood. So, and then of course, in the weeks after the water drains, mostly, and you're back to something like this again, roughly. So, and then the pole melt comes in. Now for the state of Maine again, I'm calling it about 300. So the water comes back in slowly. So you can see there's a lot of water, back and forth water action on the coast, so be so careful about that. So we don't have any nuclear stations to worry about in Maine. Lots of wildland, just beautiful. Solid rock, a bit of earthquake activity going on, a few fault lines, and karst. And it's quite a ways, as I've said, from New York, so it may not be quite so bad with migration on the northern parts of Maine, but certainly looks very good for Maine. So that's the state of Maine. Okay, there you have it. The safe locations for New Hampshire and Maine in the country of the United States. This completes my state-by-state examination of safe locations for all the areas in the United States. My next video will be, I'll be starting on Canada, probably British Columbia. After that I'll be doing the UK, and after that I'll be doing Australia, New Zealand, then Brazil and India. So this is Chris Thomas signing off. Thank you very much for watching.